There we go.
Is that Aaron Hendry I hear?
Yo, yo!
Hey,
How
Hi.
are you, man?
I'm good.
Sorry,
How are you?
I was up in my booth so we'd have good sound, but it's of course 600 million degrees, and my little booth fan could not keep up. I was like, I'm not gonna make it for a solid hour.
No worries. No worries, man. No worries at all. Well, Aaron, it is so good to see you again. It has been a number of years, unfortunately. So yeah, and these are my wonderful co-hosts, Kate and Calissa.
Yo, yo!
Hi. Nice to meet you.
And you.
All right. Well, since it's so hot, let's dive right in. Aaron, how did you get into acting?
You know, I think like a lot of actors, you just suddenly you were doing it when you were a kid. You know, that it wasn't it's something you kind of start doing before you have a cognizance that there's a job doing this. You just discover yourself, like all kids, making stories and imagining things, but then you know, if you're lucky enough to live in a town where there's a community theater or a local this or that, suddenly you're hanging out there and doing shows there and taking classes there. And you don't ever really remember the moment of, I decided to do this. You know, there's and you all read Malcolm Gladwell. You know, he was very sort of popular.
Tipping Point.
Yeah, there's very popular sort of pop culture sociologist for a while, but he says some really interesting stuff, and he talks with a lot of really successful people about the 10,000 hours theory, about getting great at something. And I think, you know, I grew up in a very small, very rural town, but one thing they had was this little sort of adapted warehouse theater program that this guy did. And I think, you know, theater actors like me, actors my age or older almost always come from a background of theater. It's so interesting now to live among young actors who said, I want to be a TV star, because no one really thought of that when I was in my 20s. You did shows is what you did, and maybe say someday you ended up with a job doing that. But you know, I think the one thing that's wonderful about theater is that it's an actual place, and you discover as a kid that it feels like the safe place to you. You just want to be there in that room all the time. And if you stick with it, you know, for by chance or by design or I don't know what, by the time you're a teenager, you've spent a lot of hours walking around that sort of psychological, spiritual, and then professional space. And it just feels like I live here, and you can't really even look back and figure out when you started living there. You just do, you know.
Gotcha. Nice. That's
Fantastic
cool.
answer.
Yeah.
I was just curious. IMDb says you were born in Indiana, and I was wondering where you were born.
I was born, I know I was born in Indianapolis. My family lived in Evansville at the time, which is sort of a rural suburb of that. That's where my mom and dad, it's where my mom is from. It's where my dad went to college. My dad's side of the family is from the, and but we were gone from there when I was pretty young. So I have a few tiny little fleeting memories of the Midwest, and they're good ones. But you know, I think there's a certain way in which I always think, you know, I lived there just long enough to get all the best childhood everything out of the Midwest and then leave. And because I remember lightning bugs and thunder showers and big 4th of July parades, and you know, riding your bikes on the streets of a suburb. But you know, by the time I was 4, we were long gone from that one. You know?
I was just curious because Kate and I were both born and raised in Bloomington, Indiana.
Oh, no way!
Yeah. So we're familiar with Evansville.
There. Yeah. Well, good stuff comes from Indiana, you know.
Definitely.
Doug Jones is also from Indiana.
Yeah.
Volleyball and basketball are both from Indiana. Right.
So what about voice acting? How did you get into that space?
Completely by mistake, or by good fortune, I guess I should say, which is you know, one of those answers that as an actor you even cringe to say that while being recorded, because we all work so damn hard to have a career. Um, Although, I'll back up on that. I got into that by having worked really hard to have a really facile, well-developed voice for total other purposes, and then truly being standing somewhere once, and someone said, "Hey, do you want to come in here and record this for me?" And just never stopped working after that. The first sort of job I had was a campaign that carried on for a long time for the Hard Rock Cafe chain, and I did a whole bunch of their locations, and it was truly just because there was a casting rep and an ad guy who were trying to figure out a local ad campaign for one of their locations, and they heard me rehearsing something else in the studio next door, and said, "Will you come in and read this script?" And just suddenly said, "What if we just make like this wide multi-location radio campaign out of this?" Because it wasn't really working for them, and I was suddenly off to the races in that. You suddenly like had something that was putting money in my pocket and was a really good reel and a really specific sound, and all the tools you need to suddenly try to have a career there.
Very nice.
So they heard you speak and they were like, "That's the voice of hard rock."
Yeah. I mean, I guess yes.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
Well, you used a very distinct voice for one character on Teen Wolf. So how did you end up in Beacon Hills?
I was doing a stage play at the time, and it was with the teenage daughter of one of the regular directors of Tim Andrew was in the show, and he came and saw me in it, and he and I just kind of became, sometimes you just bump into someone really quickly, you're like, "Oh, we're going to be friends." And when we were just talking after rehearsal one time, we were just like cut out of the same cloth, and he and I started to become pals. And I didn't know what his show was. I knew he was a director and producer, but I didn't really know much more about him. And incidentally, just my manager submitted me on the job for the No Gitsune, and when he saw that a tape had come in from me, he called me and said, "I was going to ask you to read for this. I'll make sure they see it." And so I knew I sort of had the nice, the nice gold star from one of the inside group. But I also, to be totally honest, and my manager just thought it was absolutely nuts. And this is so typical. Maybe it's why I'm a working actor and not a rich and famous actor. Is every once in a while you pick up something, you're just like, "I gotta have this. I gotta have this," and it's always really just weird roles for me, like just something that just strikes me in a way that I'm like, "I gotta do this thing," and it was supposed to be a one-off. It was a one-episode character.
Oh.
But I knew from the second I read those first 2 pages, I was like, this is mine. And so I went in, and Teen Wolf is a show that is, I don't think I'm speaking after to say, show that's well known for really, really gorgeous young people, besides being wonderful people and good actors. And everybody in the room was 10 years younger than me. And just knockout freaking beautiful. And I just went in and went for freaking broke. And I had the thing I had done in preparing for that is I had looked up, I had not known the show before, but I'd looked up the show and gotten that Jeff, who I'd not met, was serious about his folklore. And so I looked up everything I could about that creature, and I just made myself that creature, and purposely started talking in a way as if I had this massive mouth of teeth, and I would speak on purpose as if I had these super sharp teeth, and then I read about how in the Japanese sensibility, there's spirits that are both the spirit and the avatar of the spirit. That is to say, something can be a fox and also the eternal spirit of the fox. And so I got something about the otherworldliness and the ancientness of it. And I just really, everything I could about, because I was a trained method actor, to go to what you call as an actor, what you call the source, what's the raw material of this. And so everything that I could that was the raw material, I just really went in and went for broke. And and then the casting director turned off the camera and he says, I don't know what the hell you just did, but I think it was good.
Nice.
Well, I hope so. And and they dug it, and we were off to the races.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Wow.
So sorry. I was just curious, the role of Bronski, how did that come about when you were already the Naked Tsune?
I truly think Jeff felt bad that no one was ever going to see my face, because he and I became, from the very first episode, I bumped in we were shooting for a while. That season was shooting way out, if you live in LA, where Balboa and Roscoe is like in the Deep Valley. And we were shooting, and we were shooting out there, and there was a loading dock a couple hundred yards away from the trailers were, and I saw him doing something that I then would learn was a very typical thing for him to do, which is he would sort of walk these little circles around the loading dock, like thinking and thinking and thinking. And I walked up to him and I said, I'm Aaron, and I'm playing another kid's name. He said, I know, I'm glad you're on the show. And I said, do you mind if I email you some questions? And he said, no, not at all. And I had just been there I wasn't even shooting. I was just there to do a makeup test. And I went home and I emailed him, is this the body he always has, or does he switch bodies? Can he make himself a real body? Can he do all these questions I had about, so what's the reach of this character? And it was another one of those moments where we hit a chord that we had in common. And so we were immediately just on each other's vibe about creating this thing. And I think it got us both very excited about it. So by the time Bronski came around, we didn't know each other incredibly well at that point, but we were friends. We were friendly with each other, besides him being my boss, essentially. And I think he kind of felt bad that I was stuck behind the mask. And then Bronski, which was supposed to be a one-off, I just prepared for, in terms of just really preparing, a super duper textbook sadist, and really going into a place of someone who gets enjoyment from exerting power over others, and gets a physical charge from exerting that power. And so I started really bringing it with that. And we had this one scene where I let the other guards beat up Styles in a shower, I think. And Tim, who was directing that episode, said, give me one where I can just see that you get off on it. Like, give me a take where I can tell you, like, this gets you off. And after the take was over, he said, well, we can't use that. It was so disturbing what I started doing that they were like, well, he's definitely doing what we asked him to do, but that's a real freaking sicko who we just shot all of a sudden. But something about, it was just sort of, once again, you get lucky when your brain fires with another creative entity. And I started going somewhere that made Jeff go, we should make this a guy among the community, that he has old friends in the community. He has old enemies in the community. Oh, we should go the place of him, of pulling some surprise, if he's even worse than you would imagine him being, that it's everyone's nightmare of, my therapist who literally has legal and physical power over me is determined to torture me and destroy my life, and so it was, again, just like those fortunate moments when you start, as a performer, you start throwing stuff down that is where the creators want to go, and so they latch on and start running with it, you know.
That's really cool. You mentioning that reminds me of a scene from Lawrence of Arabia when he's been captured. He's been captured by the Turks, I think.
I don't know, but
and he's getting tortured, and the boss is like watching behind a ajar door, and he has like a
Yes.
handkerchief, and he's just coughing, and that's
Yeah.
and like his coughing just gets worse and worse
And
because he's like really into this.
yeah, and I think there's an intimation in the, I think in the performance after that, that he is raped. You know,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean
there's
that's
something that is,
yeah,
that they
that's
won't
yeah.
film at that point, but I mean, freaking Peter O'Toole, like, come on, like, what a
Yeah.
freaking, like, superhero of acting, and there's something he does within that performance afterwards that lets you know, like, that something in him has been broken from
Yeah.
then on. Yeah, and that's kind of what they want in this scene. But then after we shot it, they were like, I don't think we can do this on a show about teenage werewolves.
I'm kind of mad that I'll never see those tapes.
Same.
Yeah.
It's maybe yes, maybe no. You know, I never saw it, but as soon as it was done, you were like, you did what I told you to do, but can't put that on TV. Sorry about that. Yeah, it was funny.
No worries. All the stuff we did get that aired was Chef Kiss. So
Oh,
yeah.
listen, I do my job, you know, and I love my job. I'm lucky.
What Teen Wolf scene was the most fun or the most challenging to film?
It's hard to say because so much of it was so much fun. There's a way in which the very first scene with Styles, with me and Dylan O'Brien, was just thrilling because when you go way out on a limb, you kind of don't really know what the hell you're going to do until you start doing it. And so there's something very fun and irreplaceable about the magic of those moments where you're, you know, and the gift of really getting to work with one other actor and such a fun, committed, perfect for his role actor, you know, who just dove right into, like, really it becoming, going from a supernatural show to a horror show for a while, like really the real terror of what the kid's experiencing. The kind of the thrill of the real-time experience of getting those scenes is always super duper fun. And you know, the one that we shot shortly after that was the sort of the origin story for him was a ton of fun too. There's a particular scene where he gets up out of a pile. The Nogitsune rises up out of a pile of dead bodies that he's been, and kills these two soldiers and takes their truck. And that was just it was a bizarre night of shooting because we had all these extras, and it was cold, and we were in a location down near the San Pedro Harbor, and there'd been some struggles in the shooting earlier in the evening, so we were like well into like 3:30 in the morning by the time we were shooting that. And something about the Nogitsune mask is I can't really see anything. It's what I can see. It's like, I always say, it's like looking through the dirtiest 5-layer screen door you can possibly imagine. Whereas if a light hits a certain thing, I can see the silhouette of it, or if a light is directly behind me, I can kind of suddenly see as far as my own hand, but I couldn't really see anything. So I'd try to block it without my makeup on. And one of the pieces of behavior that came about from that, actually, again, like trying to work in the animal and then just the accidents of invention, was the way of reaching out and grabbing everything. which I kind of started sort of imagining these claws gripping everything and sort of possessing everything as it went by. But really, I just couldn't see. And I had to make a way of doing my blocking that involved grabbing onto anyone and anything that I passed by. And so there was some moment that happened where I got up out of these dead and walked through this field, and I'm walking over bodies and I can't see the bodies I'm walking over, and like slowly into frame my frame I can see this truck, and I grab the truck and crawl up the side of the truck and grab this guy's head and rip it off. Which is incredibly fun for me because it's sort of contrived to mimic the experience of it, that it was kind of this experience of like swimming through murky water until I found my goal. And so there was something very fun about that. And probably the hardest was the season finale of that season of 4B, I think, because everyone was just so tired, and there was a ton of people in that scene, and that was a night shoot that we were shooting, I think, until like 7:30 the next morning on that night. And literally was at the point where in between takes, me and the rest of the cast would just lay down on our back on the middle of the stage and like say nothing in order to try to like get, and that was probably the hardest, simply because we were still having fun, but we were at a place in the shooting process where everyone was just so damn tired at that point, but we got it, it's a good scene.
And that's what
Yeah,
matters.
that's great.
It's incredible.
Yeah, pain is
Everyone-
temporary, film is forever.
Everyone pretty much agrees 3B is the best season.
Yeah,
so-
it is kind of just an understood fact.
Yes.
Thanks guys.
So the trailer for the Teen Wolf movie dropped a little while back.
Oh, it did.
And we heard a very familiar voice in it. What was it like returning to the Nogitsune after so many years away?
Well, I cannot confirm or deny the presence of myself in said film. However, very, very savvy Teen Wolf aficionados will be suspect and curious about what they're going to see in that film. All I can say about that truly is that I have, it is such a blessing to it's such a lucky stroke to have a team that truly you just love to work with, and the cohesion of the way you like to work happens very quickly and very easily without a lot of tears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also such a gift for any actor to be given the opportunity for a role that is just invention. We're just going to make something out of nothing. We're just going to find an idea and create this weird supernatural menace. And I got to do both of those things. And so, anytime I get asked back by Jeff Davis to do something, I say yes, because that's always the experience with him,
I couldn't agree more. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
You shared about having a lot of fun on that first scene with Styles. Do you have any other fun memories from the set of Teen Wolf that you'd like to share?
Well, what's funny is that a funny story that I always tell, and actually I think Tyler Posey is sick of me telling this story, but I'll tell it one more time because he always thinks he I don't know, makes him, he's such a humble and such a kind person. But it happened quickly enough, and I'd gotten the script and zoomed through episodes to see the characters I had interact with, and I had never watched the whole series at that point. Like, you shouldn't admit that, but I hadn't by the time I was on set shooting. And he came on to set, and I didn't know who he was. And he sat down next to me and Dylan O'Brien in the chairs, and he was like, "Hey, what's up? How's it going? How's it going?" I was like, "Oh, hey, I'm Aaron. I'm the guest star on the episode, and I think it's pretty good. It's a cool little show, isn't it? It's kind of like a teenage soap opera, except we're all werewolves, and and it's also a cool coming of age story about this teenager who has this super psycho power he doesn't know what to do with. I think it's, really, there's some good pop culture and some good meat and bones there. I'm excited to work on. Just kind of gave my whole like doctorate spiel on what I thought of the show at that time. And when he walked, he was like, "Oh, that's great." And he walked off, and Dylan O'Brien said, "That's the Teen Wolf." And I did, and I was like, "Oh!" And I was super duper embarrassed, and was like, "Oh my God, he's gonna hate my guts from now on." But like, the guy just is maybe the nicest guy on planet Earth, and yeah. Anyway, but that was a fun time, a fun not shooting time, and there were a lot of fun not shooting times. Just we worked like gangbusters on that show because for the schedule we always got a lot, but truly, I mean, I feel like it's what everyone says when they get asked about a show they were on, but it's no joke that team of people was just, I think it's the only way we got through it was in general, that team of people made themselves so pleasurable to be around. I guess one of the other funny things was, I don't remember a specific moment, but for weeks and weeks on, I would re-meet people that had only met me once I was in makeup. And I had several times, talking about the film, several times said hello to Crystal, and just in a way you would a friend, before probably 10 weeks into the first time she met me. While I was in makeup, she said, "I've just figured out that you're the guy who keeps saying hi to me and I don't know him." And so I would have all these feelings like, I know all these people, why don't they know me? Because you forget, no one has any idea what I look like or sound like no one knows. And that was always a funny experience, and there were several people that happened with. People would walk, ADs who would walk up to me and be like, "It's a closed set, sir," and I'm like, "I'm in the damn scene." Yeah, it was kind of weird.
That's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's like Bruce Wayne walking around and waving hi to the Joker and stuff, and the
No,
Joker being
really,
like,
I'm
"Who the hell is
Batman."
that?"
Sure you are, Mr. Wayne. Sure you are. I am. That's awesome.
So, Teen Wolf has some of the most passionate fans out there. Have you had any? Have you had any fun fan encounters you'd like to share with us?
I continued doing. I had my first kid 5 years ago, and I continued doing stage work all the way up through that. I did one stage show after my kids came along, but stage work is such an intense time commitment that I haven't been able to do as much of that as I wanted. But I was always amazed how at first I couldn't figure it out, but no matter what the play was, I mean, Eugene O'Neill or Shakespeare or Steinbeck, like anything that you wouldn't think it, I'd look out and there'd be some gang of like 15 and 16-year-olds from the San Fernando Valley who came to see me. And it took me a while to go, oh, it's because you're following my Twitter, you're following my fan page, and I posted on the page. And so that was really actually super fun to have the opposite of the experience I described, where I got to sort of show the work that I do that had nothing to do with the show to a lot of fans. And then there were, of course, just like the weird, I took a trip to Belize, and in Belize City, the young woman pulling my bag onto the carousel said, "You're from Teen Wolf, aren't you?" And the funny thing is, even still to this day, no one who would see me on the street would know I was the No Kitsune. I mean, I could go to Comic-Con and ask questions of the panel from Teen Wolf, and no one would have any idea that it was me. And that's always a bizarre thing, but kind of the funnest thing about that was the year after 4B, I went out. We were living in Los Feliz at the time. I went out in that neighborhood. There's a lot of kid walkers, and I saw two kids dressed up as me, And I was like, wow, that is a moment when you walk out for Halloween and you see people dressed up as your character. It's like,
That's so cool.
wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool, you know.
That would be
And
incredible.
I would have been like Bruce Wayne if I'd walked around and been like, I'm the No Kitsune, and this 12-year-old kid would have been like, yeah, sure you are, man. Get away from me, you know. So it's a weird experience, like becoming known for someone that no one will ever know who you are, you know.
Yeah, we had actually posted on our socials that we were going to be interviewing you and taking some fan questions. And on both our accounts, we were having people with their mind blown that you played both characters. Like, what?
Yeah,
This is the first time hearing about that.
It's hilarious. Yeah, and I think those two I think there were 2 episodes that both the characters were in. Actually, we would block shoot, so we would shoot some stuff out of order sometimes. But I think there's 2 episodes where the Nogitsune and Brunsky are both in the same episode. There might be. I'd have to really watch it again.
They're definitely both in Echo House.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. It's fun.
you're
It's
like
a lot of fun.
the human villain and the inhuman villain in the same
Right.
episode.
Yeah.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
I think
oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, hit it, Will. Hit it, man.
Oh, I was just going to say that, like, you know, speaking of Echo House, where both characters are in it, what was it like sort of vacillating back and forth between 2 different types of evil, of villains?
Well, as you know better than anybody, like they hold their cards way to their chest, even with the cast, you know, in terms of telling what the future of these things are. And I think everyone, including me, was questioning at that point, are we going to be made aware this is the same guy? Are we going to be made aware that this is the physical, that this is the human being that the Nogitsune has taken over, and that he is alternating between this spiritual world and this man that he's walking around as. And I totally thought that's where they were going, because otherwise, why the heck were they going to cast me to play 2 parts in the same blah 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 blah? But you know, the fortunately, I don't think we ever shot the 2 characters on the same day. That would have been a little berserk. But you know, fortunately, like I said, I mean, I had my first job as an actor in a stage show when I was a teenager, and so I had, if there was anything that I knew how to do, it was, you know, and it's really something that often with really young actors, my heart goes out to them, because it isn't always taught anymore because people aren't doing live work. You learn how to create a world of something, create an entity in that world, create a set of circumstances, and to be able to leave it and go back to it. Otherwise, you can't do the same show Tuesday night through Sunday and twice on Sunday. You can't. It's different than the experience of film, where you find a pinnacle, finding the sweet spot of this one moment, and you lay down that moment. It may be a different interpretation of the moment, and then you walk away. The story moves on from it. When you do a stage play, you have to like make an architecture inside you that accommodates the world of these people and start over every single night. Like you have to go back to one, and so I feel fortunate that that's where I had come from, because it made it so I knew how to create a world for each of these individuals, that when I went to that world, that's really the job. You go to that world, and then the world starts to act on you, and it becomes an easy thing to do, you know.
Very cool. Very cool.
I know, that was very like, woo! I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
it's fascinating to hear.
Absolutely. So your credit is working as a looper on Love and Monsters starring Dylan O'Brien. Can you
Yes.
explain to our listeners what that means?
Looping is this subset of the voiceover world that it can mean a couple of different things, and it can encompass a couple of different things. And there was, by the way, for anyone who follows that, there was a huge article in the Hollywood Reporter about it. I want to say 5 or 6 months ago. It was really talking quite divisively about it because sometimes it can be a very sought after job, and there's kind of people in a certain world of what we do who think of it as a gimme job. I have to tell you, looping jobs are some of the hardest stuff I've ever done, and it's, I know people who are great at it, and it is a hard skill to get great at. It's everything, every voice you're going to hear who doesn't have a face attached to it in the entire movie. And a lot of that is just, for example, the other people eating at a restaurant. If you think back to when I was a kid, at least to the 60s or 70s, you'd watch a scene with a crowd in it, and either you couldn't hear that crowd, you could hear the actors that were mic'd, and the crowd would be moving around the background making no noise, or you would hear a track that didn't really match. You'd hear like loud kitchen noise, but it wouldn't, you could tell it was kind of, it felt like a spaghetti Western, like a sound that was coming from somewhere else. And somewhere around, I don't know when exactly, but somewhere in the 80s, they started saying, you know, we're getting closer and closer to making genuine, as if you are in the room, experiences with our sensibility of film. And so there started to be these specialty people who watch the scene and pick out, they're eating this, they're talking to the waiter, these two are having a conversation, do they look like a husband and wife? Oh look, then a kid runs in from here, and basically does the task of voicing all the people over there in the background, so that without knowing it, it now really sounds like you're standing in that room. And what they then really learned, which is why I said when you find people that are masterful at it, is you can change the entire mood of a movie by making the background sound a different sound, by making a police station sound like a friendly police station where everyone knows the name on every street, or a very active police station where there's a lot of crime going on. That you can, and loop groups, those people are loopers, and loop groups get hired to do exactly that, to change the tone of entire movies and entire shows by making a sound that makes you feel, and you would never know it was there until you take it away, but you go, oh, this makes me feel like I'm in this certain environment, in this certain tone. Now, that's a lot of what, that would say it's a majority of what loopers do, but another part of what loopers do, which is a lot of what I do, is they fill in everything that, again, no one would think that's an actor doing that. Like, you know, if the character's sheriff and leans into his car and picks up the radio, someone on the other end says, Baker 416, we're southbound on Elm in pursuit of a subject, provide assist, please advise, come back, something like that. That's a looper who did that, because it suddenly to your eye looks wrong that he reaches in, picks up the radio, and no one talks. And so the looper comes in and makes a cop, the voice of a cop. So it's a bizarre subset of the business that that is really an awesome gift, because I don't do a ton of it, but you do, you know, you're always looking as an actor for what is every angle I can work to keep food on the table, because literally every time you walk off a set, you're without a job again, you know. So, but that's the long and the short of what a looper is in a nutshell. It's a hard thing to describe.
Oh, that's really cool. I had no idea.
It's really interesting.
It's, you know, there's even, I don't know if trademark wise I'm allowed to, because there's certain franchises you sign so many things that you won't talk about, but there are literally famous tough guys who, while having fist fights, the guy you're listening to roaring and smashing and punching is me. Wow. And other loopers. Like there are actors who I specifically get called because they did an action scene with that person, and they didn't mic them because it's hard to mic the action scene. And I watch the scene and go, oh, and that's
Chris Evans.
Hearing.
Is that you?
What's that?
I said Chris Evans. That Captain America I hear.
Like, but yeah, I mean, but yes, stuff that size. Yeah, things that size. Yeah. It's
very
bizarre.
cool.
It's a bizarre part of the business that no one would ever know was there, you know.
Wait, so you can't tell us which?
That I don't know if I can, but there are certain. It's people as big as Chris Evans. Yes,
Nice.
it is large. And I know there's something going to be like Aaron Hendry said, Chris. What I mean is, it's people you know, and it's
Nice.
movies you know, and it's franchises you know. Yeah,
That's very
and
cool.
and that's not just specific to me, and it's specific to this not tiny but not huge group that are known looping actors, and they're just incredibly skilled. They are able to watch a picture and make the sound of what that picture is, and it's an incredible skill.
Yeah.
You know, the people who do it all the time.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I'm definitely gonna go find that article you mentioned now.
Yeah, we'll link it to this
Check
episode.
that
Yeah.
out.
Well, there was this article that was really just like, how hard can it be? Which to anyone who's done the job was like, it can be very freaking hard. And
Yeah.
and 9 out of 10 people who do it once only do it once because they find out, wow, this is a real, and when it doesn't work, it is glaring that it doesn't work. Like you can watch something on camera and know whether it's working or not. And you would never know it's off until it's off. And it also sort of really kind of, the article sort of really conflated the idea that people are making millions of dollars on this, which, you know, is not really the case. But more than anything, you know, I haven't talked about that article. A lot of people really got pissed off about that article, but more than anything, it griped that people, it took the position of, why won't those people share the jobs? And that was the hardest thing personally for me as an actor, to say, any actor in this business, you fight for an opportunity and then you do good at the opportunity and they ask you to do it again. And that's pretty much every career in the world. So why would you fault someone for showing up and doing good enough that they asked them to do it again, you know?
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not the mainstay of my career, but I think it's a really interesting part of the business. And I think the people who are excellent at are really quite remarkable talents, you know?
That's very cool.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna be watching every subsequent fight scene, just being like, is that him?
Well,
that
you know
him?
what you'll start to hear is you'll start to hear moments where it's off, where a word's off or a sound is off. And just for a second, your ear is out. And then you don't think about it and move on. But now that you know, you'll rewind and go, I swear to God, that's a place where they had to replace the sound. Because your ear knows, like it just does. You're watching a scene and suddenly there's this bump and you're like, wow, something doesn't work there. And that's what they hire these people to fix, you know? It's bizarre.
Very cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
That's really cool. Are there any characters on Teen Wolf that you wish you would have gotten a chance to interact with on screen?
Yeah, I mean, that is a strange thing too, when you're contained in a certain interaction. There's whole things in episodes that you don't, are happening beside you, but you don't touch at all. You know, I mean, yes, lots. That's the thing is, I think I would have loved to have somehow ended up in the world of Argent, simply because I love that actor so much, and it's what he's doing is such an archetypical and interesting thing on the show as the mentor, and for a show that is a young person's show, and so it's about the future and it's about freshness and brightness. It's such a very wise thing that they put on the show, to have someone who is the voice of history and the voice of the past, and he, you know, he's just such a neat character and such a neat guy that I wish I'd had a storyline with him. I never did, you know.
Yeah, JR is great. That would have been fun. That would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
And he was always, I mean, he's just always one of those actors who he'd watch it, and he did know who I was, and would walk up afterwards and say, hey, I saw your work in the last episode. And so that was fun, because, you know, there is also a camaraderie just of the work when you find someone who gives a crap about it the same way you do. And I wish we'd had a scene together. We never did. Yeah.
Nice.
Who on the Teen Wolf set, cast or crew, would make the best alpha?
Wow. I would say I mean, it's so different. If you'd asked me when I was, 25 years old, I would give you a different answer. But I would say truly and sincerely, Posey. He is so right for that. And I don't know if it's because he grew up with it, but he is, when he's on the set, he really, really epitomizes being the leader of something by showing up, supporting everyone, noticing everyone, doing excellent work, being there to find out what the problem is, if there is a problem, and being someone who fills in the gap and is always in the attitude of, oh, we'll get this. We don't. There's not, the sky's not falling. Don't worry. And in that way, he, that the leadership quality of being someone who, when they walk on, you're just confident everything's going to work, is such a sort of unobtrusive and humble but powerful leadership quality and he really has that. And truly, I mean, I know it sounds like I'm just trying to feed into the work, the storylines, but Hecklin would be the other one, because Hecklin works in a way that is interested in the details. He wants to know what's going on, and he wants people to take ownership of doing great work. And he is the first guy, if there's a problem, to say, whoa, Aaron's got a problem. Let's figure out what Aaron's problem is. And so he is a very very assertive about saying, this is a team, we build this thing with this team. And they're truly, I mean, they're both, I don't know whether they grew into those qualities within the show or whether it's what made them right for the show, but they both really have personal qualities that follow who they are in the storylines and really make it a fun situation to work with them. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. That's great to hear. That's really
Yeah.
good to hear.
That's a great answer.
How would you compare working on Teen Wolf to something bigger, like a Marvel show, like Inhumans?
The fun thing about working for Marvel is, the sky's the limit. I mean, they're freaking Marvel. what can't you do? The thing that is true about any size of show, though, that again was saying that really worked on Teen Wolf, and I don't think I'm not saying doesn't work for Marvel, but is hard with an entity as large as Marvel, is you can feel while you're shooting something whether the minds are lined up and the vision is lined up and it's working. And you can feel when it's not. Mm-hmm. And there's something about a team that somehow hits its stride of knowing how to get on the same page and see the same thing you're headed for, or at least, Russell is the director of the Teen Wolf film, and having worked with him, no one ever knows where the hell Russell is going. Like, he is a complete madman.
That is accurate.
He has but he has a body of work that allows you to say, where this ship is going. So I will just get on the ship and sail it with you. I don't need to know where the ship is going, because you've proven you can see it. You see it out there somewhere. And when you work on a set like that, things fall together quick. And I think an obstacle with giant entities like Marvel is there's especially, you know, that show shot in Hawaii, and there's a huge amount of time and decision making and departments and approval to get checked in with every time you're going to take a single shot of anybody doing anything. I mean, the number of people who had to like sign off on those like crazy, you know, super crocodile arms that I was wearing was so insane that you know, it takes a lot of doing to keep something on focus when you're doing something with an entity of that size. That's the trade of all of the magic that is possible with an entity of that size. They're truly like, you know, where do you want to go? We'll go there, you know.
Right.
But it's tricky.
It's interesting. That's very interesting to hear.
Yeah.
If you could be any Teen Wolf creature, what would you want to be?
Oof. Oh God. Wow. You know what's interesting is I think the answer is like a personality test, isn't it? You know, in a certain way. It's like the answer of flying or invisibility, you know.
Yeah.
And I that's so interesting. You know what I'd want to be is I'd want to be one of the hunters. I wouldn't want to be one of the supernatural characters.
Right.
Because of the I think what I loved about that character, I love about those characters is the looking and the listening is such a part of that identity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much to that I find admirable and envy. I mean, we all are thinking a lot of thoughts and have a lot of ambitions and gotta do a lot of things. And when you really think about the people who are like quite extraordinary presences, they're people who like really know how to look and listen and just stay even as life goes on, you know. And I love that about that personality, you know. And I think, you know, again, I think why that show works so well is because it has this pop culture thing of, you know, I mean, I'm gonna say something horrible. If Jeff ever hears it, he'll strangle me. It's like Dawson's Creek plus werewolves, you know. And it's don't listen to your parents, have all the sex you want, you're always right, they're wrong, and we're werewolves, you know. And so there's a wonderful, just like, heck yes, that's a show we'll watch. But then what it gets followed up with, and again, it has to do with his love of the subcultures and of the mythos, is that they are characters who are learning the lessons of self-knowledge, of power, of weakness, of all these different things through these mythical creatures that you know were invented in human spirituality to teach us those lessons, you know. And watching, I went back and watched those first few seasons, and the story of a young man who discovers this incredibly strong, brave entity that's this psycho savage Superman inside of him, and he can't control it, but it's able to do all these things. And then the story of going, oh, that's not it, that's me, I am it, is such a giant, like, mythical story of the world. And so there's something that really works about having this youthful pop culture show that is then told in the context of these allegorical lessons that all the characters learn through the supernatural powers. And so I think I think there's a personality test in the answer about who you identify with and what is that thing that is the struggle of your own life that you're looking to get a handle on, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
Right. It's very cool. That's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
really interesting look. interesting take on it.
Yes. So you recently co-wrote a Nicolas Cage film called Prisoners of the Ghostland. And this isn't a
Yes.
question, it's a statement, or not even a statement. But I just wanted to thank you for your service to all of us. And can you tell us what that experience was like?
Yeah, that was so fun. I have always written a lot, and I've written several I've produced in 99 Sea Houses, several stage plays that I've written, but it's always just been something I did for the fun of writing. And the only times I'd ever shown any screenplays that I wrote to other aspiring writers or career writers, they'd always said, no one will ever make this movie. You're out of your mind. And because of the things I liked to write. And because of that, I didn't pursue it a lot. And I wish I hadn't listened to that, because now that writing is a part of my career, it's such a fun part of invention, And that was written with a friend of mine from college, just a really excellent friend named Reza Safai, who, have you seen the film A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful, small Iranian vampire film. And he was one of the main creative producers that got that film made.
Oh,
and
okay.
and
That's
that kind
super
of
cool.
put him on the map of the weirdo spiritual indie film world. And he's just been a friend of mine for 25 plus years. And he and I did a lot of stage work together, did a lot of writing work together, and he got contacted. Another producer friend of his was saying, Sion Sono is looking for his first English language film. And Sion Sono is sort of like, again, if he could hear me say this, he'd strangle me, but it's apt. He's sort of like Kurosawa plus Tarantino. And in that he has this amazing skill of the poetry of ultraviolence, but is also coming from this really, really finely honed skill of Japanese storytelling that sort of doesn't really exist here, that we have a version of, but not really the way they do. And because English wasn't his first language, he was for the first time looking at scripts that were previously written. He had always written all his films. And I mean, the guy's made like 50 something films. I mean, he's made a lot of dang movies. Wow. So, this other producer had said to Reza, he's looking, and Reza called me and said, I think, we've batted around an idea that he would like. And so we developed that idea and brought it to him, and he dug it. And then Reza was with another film at Sundance when Mandy was winning all the awards at Sundance. And he ended up talking to Cage, who was a giant Sion Sono fan, because, Cage is a big cinephile. And sort of, that's with films that size, it's kind of how you get off to the races is if you're not a film that's going to go to a big house, you look to say, well, who's the right director? Who's the right actor? And then inevitably, there's an actor or a director or a producer who wants to work with that person, because they're the kind of films that get made by people who are just dying to make that kind of material. And then people start jumping on board. But we rewrote that 11 times, because it went from, while working with Sion, we in the pre-production, we rewrote 11 versions of that were all essentially the same story, but they had far and wide things that got dropped and added and dropped again, because I mean, he's a crazy person. And we went from a wildly bizarre script to a shockingly bizarre script, but he ended up being the right guy, like the core of what the story was. He really got it. And it wasn't supposed to shoot in Japan. It was supposed to shoot in Mexico. And he had a heart attack 3 weeks before we were supposed to start shooting. Yeah. And so for his physical health, and in addition to us just being able to get our insurance, Cage, I think, was actually the first one who said, we don't want to risk putting the director on a plane a couple of weeks after he's had a heart attack. Let's delay. I'll stay with it. I'll extend my, the terms of his contract, and let's kick back a couple months and go in Japan. And it worked awesome, because all of the stuff that sort of that was in that film about a crumbling empire, so to speak, about power that is beyond its moment and becomes voracious, looking for power and looking for control, and that sort of being the antagonistic force on this anti-hero who suddenly discovers himself being the hero. That, with the Japanese sensibility of the East versus West culture, just really took off in a way that I don't think it could have without Sion Sono. And so it was great. It was great. It ended up being a really bizarre but great time,
That's awesome.
to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
For the is this one a fan question, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume it's the Nogitsune costume.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, I meant to
Okay.
add that.
This is a fan question. Was the Nogitsune costume uncomfortable, or did the costume designers make sure it was comfy to move around in?
There were some things that had to get sort of developed on costume wise. When we got to the episode where it was the entire bandage suit, it was kind of like, oh, what the heck are we gonna do now? Because we, made the bandages that came down to your clavicle, and then there were clothes over it. But with the regular outfit, the biggest obstacle was, basically when you have a big winter hat on over your entire head, you just start to get hot really fast. And so there had to be adjustments of just simple things like taking the sleeves off the arms of the shirts, taking the lining out of the jacket. They even sewed a pocket into the back of the jacket that they'd slip ice packs in and out of, because once you're in that kind of makeup, it costs a lot of time on set if you keep pulling yourself in and out of it. And so there were some uncomfortable things that they fixed, but obviously they really got on. The thing that was hard, and I'm sure you heard this from other people who had way harder creature makeup than me, was the amount of time you have to remain in order to be able to shoot just becomes really kind of punishing. And for me, fortunately, because I didn't have all the rubber prosthetics that really became unbreathable, and the sweat is unbearable and all that stuff, the hardest thing was really just the disorientation, was that we had to have someone who would just come take my arm and walk me around the set and get me stuff to eat, and literally I'd open my mouth and they'd shove a bite of food in my mouth or a straw, and so the hardest comfort part of it was kind of like that, the experience of taking a plane ride overseas, where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm off a plane. You're on there for just long enough that your brain kind of adapts to I'm somewhere else. And after a full day of shooting, I would pull the gloves off and the teeth out and the head off, and I'd be like, oh yeah, this is what it's like to see things and talk, and you sort of go a little batshit after a while, because it just becomes so disorienting,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
really,
imagine.
really enjoy seeing footage of the Nogitsune being spoon-fed.
Yeah.
That sounds delightful.
Someone must have that somewhere. I'm sure someone has a picture of that happening.
So how long were you in the makeup chair for that costume?
They were really, the first few times it would take about an hour, but they were really determined. One reason, practically speaking, because they have to makeup change so many people, and our shooting days were totally scheduled around who has to go to makeup and turn into another creature, because that takes so much time. They were really determined to make it so that could be done quickly and comfortably enough that I could get through all the way to lunch without taking any of it off, and then put it back on and get all the way to the end of a shooting day without taking it off. And so they got that down to first time of the day putting it on, because you have to do some under makeup so you can't see any human features and fit the teeth and blah, 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 would take about an hour. But then if they had to break it down and put it back together, they could break me apart and put me back together in about half an hour. So I wasn't nearly as taxed as a lot of the other people. And you know, once they got, like, when they revisited him at the end of the series, they've gotten more ambitious with the look, and the more ambitious that they get with the look, the longer it takes. Because suddenly they're like, we want claws to go through, and we want the bandages to be more form-fitting so you can see the, you know, the skull eyes and blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, oh, now we're getting tricky and this is going to take a while. But they did a really great job. And that team, you know, I think if there's anybody on that set that is the closest to the cast, it's probably the FX team, because you were so reliant on your work with them and spent so much time at their side, you know?
Yeah.
So you've played some really incredible characters throughout the course of your career. What has been your favorite role to play?
Holy mackerel. You know, the No Kitsune is up there because of the invention, to be totally honest. There's just a fun to it. But there was, I wonder if anyone's ever seen this movie. There was a movie called F-Stops that I did when I was really young. And it was about a young director who finds a couple actors and wants to make a bank robbery movie, and they end up actually robbing banks because they don't know what they're doing. And, yeah,
that sounds fun.
That sounds really fun.
It's a great setup for a film. And what was fun about that was that it was definitely a life follows art in terms of, you know, the director was a year out of film school, and we were all in our mid-20s. And we didn't know what the hell that we were doing, and we like went on these locations out to the desert and would you know, not have brought enough food, or there was nowhere for people to cool off, or we hadn't approved where we were going to be shooting, or nowhere to, like, the grip team was the only professional team on it, and like over and over they had to like remind the people producing it. Producing is a very liberal term in this case, that they need a tremendous amount of power to plug all these lights in, and so it was really just a total comedy of errors doing it. But I have to say, I look back on that and the work I did because it was a genuine, I mean, you always do work that you relate to. It was a genuine story of a young actor who so wants to be in this world and succeed, and so doesn't understand how to make that happen, that they find themselves confronted with doing something desperate, and they decide to do it, and then learn the lesson of there's certain things you can't ever take back about life. And when I watch that performance, I'm so proud of that performance. Like it's a really damn good performance, you know. And then there's another film, a feature length. Oh, this was something that my friend Reza Sapai did before he made it big. There's a feature length film that he made of the Beastie Boys video Sabotage, and I played Cochise in it. I played the detective with the mustache,
handlebar,
wig. And it's a detective story where all the other cops are modern day looking cops, and I'm this one cop who walks around with a fake mustache and the hair and the light that I throw on the top of the car, and has all these weird, like, you know, I'm gonna dunk you like a donut, punk, you know, like ridiculous freaking lines. But I love that one too. And that's, you know, it goes back to the first thing I said, which is there's something I love about the roles that are so far out on a limb that the challenge is, but can I make this a real entity? Can I make this a real human being? And so the story, it's like the made up story from the video of him losing the love of his life and turning into this hardcore justice oriented guy. It's sort of a like bizarrely music video comic version of the Punisher almost, you know. And I loved that because it was such a challenge to say, but somewhere in there's a real human being doing this. Like, people do crazy stuff. Someone would really do this. So how do you actually find the guy that would live this life, you know? And I love playing parts like that, where you go, this is so far out on a limb. How could we possibly make this work? Let's see if we can make it work, you know?
Nice. That's really cool. That's
Yeah.
that's really cool. We're gonna have to find these
Let's find
projects and
those,
give
yeah.
them a look.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, are there any upcoming projects you can tell us about?
We have, you know, I've really done a lot of shifting to trying to be in the creative side of it, because I just started having so much fun with that. There's some TV appearances coming up, but I have to be honest, I should have figured. I don't know which ones I'm allowed to say and not. My God, you have to sign so much stuff every time you step onto the set now. But yeah, Reza and I have one set up with a really wonderful director that has kind of in the pipeline and moving, a new film with me and the fellow who produced and co-wrote Ghostland, that I'm really excited about. And boy, if you thought no one would touch the Ghostland script, like, this was one that's like, I dare you to make this crazy movie that I just wrote. But I love it for actually exactly what I just said. I love this an actor. While writing this, we fell so in love with the people, and it's also, he, you know, Reza is first generation from Iran, and so he and I both, we found a real sweet spot of telling a very, very American story that has a strong point of view of someone from the Midwest just steeped in being red, white, and blue American, and someone from a foreign country who's discovering what it is to be an American. And I just love it, and I love the people. And so fingers crossed that within 18 months, you guys are going to be watching that film. It's looking good. It's looking like we're getting places.
Well, fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that.
Definitely,
Thanks.
we will be keeping an eye out for that. And Aaron, this has been an absolute pleasure getting to talk to
Yes.
you and revisit two of our favorite villains from all of Teen Wolf.
Yes.
Yeah, well, me too. And I can't, you know, I'm so psyched that you guys are introducing people back to the series again before they come out with that film, because I, you know, like I said, Russell, who's directing that film, never disappoints. He always shoots stuff that you're like, I don't know what the hell you are doing. And then he finishes it and you're like, oh, that's what you're doing. That's awesome. So I think it's going to be a pleaser without a doubt, you know.
I think so as well. We're very
Cannot wait
excited
to
for
see
it.
it.
Yes.
Right on.
Well,
Before
mhm.
we log off, can we make a request?
We'll see if I can fulfill it.
Can you say "Dude at Beacon Hills" in the Nogitsune voice?
Oh, sure. All right, let's see. Okay, so here's the tricks of being the Nogitsune. First, you have to imagine that you have legs that bend backwards like a fox would or like a dog would. So that's actually where the walk comes from, is walking as if your knees bend the opposite way. And one of the effects of that is it makes the rest of your body pitch way forward and your chest comes out. And so your voice naturally drops way down, because you've got you're breathing from your torso all of a sudden instead from down. And then you've got to find the teeth, and that because he can't see, his teeth are his sensory organ. He feels with his teeth when he breathes through them. Dude, it's Beacon Hills.
oh my God. That's
That was
awesome.
incredible.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That
you.
was amazing. Holy
Thank
shit.
you. And
All
And
right.
real quick, that's so interesting the what you talking about the walk and all that, and because we were rewatching your first appearance as the Megitsune, and we're like the movement and the walk is so interesting. And when you said that, it reminds me of that short story. I cannot remember the name of it. I'm sure Kate or Cliff will remember, where it's this guy is trying to get into a woman's house, and he's just like, I just want to come up the porch steps, and she's like, I can't do that, and he walks weird. And there's something about it. It's because he's the devil, and he has cloven feet that are in shoes, and he can't walk correctly.
Where are you going? Where have you been?
Is that it?
Feral Oats, the one that
I don't know it. Oh my god, I gotta read it now.
Yes, so
yeah,
that's so cool.
That's that's what I mean when I say like characters like that. What you do is you grab onto the source material. In the case of something supernatural or otherworldly, like by the time I got done inventing that body, like shit was happening, you know what I mean? And then the mistakes of like when you walk like that and you can't see, suddenly you realize you gotta grab everything along the way. And when you have the big sad teeth, you're suddenly like, I have to wrap my lips around every word. And so yeah, there's a lot of really fun stuff that happens if you just slip into the world of it, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us today, and we hope
awesome.
have a great rest of your evening. And we are so excited for the Teen Wolf movie and for everything else you've got coming down the pipeline.
Thanks, man. Me too. All right.
All right.
Good
well, you
luck
have
to
a great
y'all.
one,
Have a
and
great
we'll
evening. Thanks so much for having me on.
yes, we'll talk soon. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I look forward to it, Will.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.